breaking down the Vikings from the perspective of a former NFL General Manager of the Year. It's Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, presented by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
Welcome to Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday, and occasionally Wednesday if it's Thanksgiving week during the Vikings season, by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via link from the Score North website. I'm Jeff Diamond, former Vikings GM, former Tennessee Titans president. Our producer is AJ Fredrickson, does a great job getting us on the air, getting all of our clips and interviews and audio. And AJ, I'm going to start today by talking about hindsight.
Okay, I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, we're going to talk about hindsight a little bit, and hindsight in life and in the sports world. And because the Vikings are facing Sam Darnold this week, and JJ McCarthy is in the concussion protocol, which, by the way, Kevin O'Connell said today he was practicing on a limited basis, but not doing any team drills, just doing individual. And Max Brosmer, the number 2, was doing all the team stuff. And we'll see how it progresses during the week for young JJ, if he's able to make it back from that concussion after he had the symptoms on the plane ride home after the dreadful Green Bay game. But with the Vikings facing Sam Darnold this Sunday, it really creates a window for a lot of noise
Yes.
about what could have been, should have been happening in the offseason with the Vikings quarterback decisions. And it's a tough, sticky wicket, as they say. And I understand this from my years as a GM, as a team president. You make decisions, and you make the decisions with the information you have at the time. You think they're wise decisions, but in retrospect and in hindsight, sometimes they don't turn out that way. And that's clearly what we're dealing with here on Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, and JJ McCarthy, and the fact that the Vikings put all their eggs in JJ's basket, wound up signing Carson Wentz. He was definitely not the best option compared to if they'd brought Darnold back on a franchise tag, which would have been very costly, at $40.2 million, or if they even, I think a more palatable solution would have been to make a better offer to Daniel Jones, who is ranked 10th in the league in passer rating, over 100. He's got the Colts in first place in the AFC South. Of course, Darnold is having a tremendous year, and the Vikings will see him firsthand on Sunday. He's sitting there with a 106 rating and has led the Seahawks to an 8-3 record with the league's 5th best quarterback rating, which would be even better if he hadn't thrown 4 picks 2 weeks ago against the Rams, which is kind of his kryptonite team, as we know very well. But AJ, hindsight it's tough, and I can appreciate the decision making that goes into these situations. But I think the Vikings really, I believe, should have made a stronger effort to re-sign, especially Daniel Jones. I think putting $40 million on Darnold after those last 2 dreadful games against the Lions and Rams, I don't think anybody thought that made sense. But for Daniel Jones, who you may have gotten for $20 million, $25 million, the Colts paid him $14 on 1 year, and he chose the Colts because he thought he had a better chance to beat out Anthony Richardson. He's happy in Indy. He made a great decision. But if the Vikings had offered more money, and supposedly their offer was a little better, if it had been a lot better, maybe Daniel Jones would be here. Yeah. And maybe the Vikings have 2 or 3 more wins, I would say, compared to what McCarthy's given them with that 57 passer rating and 10 interceptions, throwing a pick in every game, and often injured, unfortunately, from the ankle sprain, from the knee last year, and now in the concussion protocol.
Yeah, it's weird to be able to speculate like we are, where, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and then the rest of his front office team, it's very much it's door A or door B. Which one do you want to go down? And I think door C, which is one that you talked about, the Sam Darnold door would have been very expensive. Who knows what they could have done free agency. And that's part of, I think, the reason why they shied away from that, which is you could go out and you get, Jonathan Hargrave. You could go get a Ryan Kelly, a Will Fries. And obviously we've seen now how that has all panned out. You have Ryan Kelly. obviously he came back, but there's been the past couple of weeks, is he going to even keep playing football because he's dealing with injuries and concussions? But you're right. I think that in hindsight now talking, Daniel Jones seems like possibly the most no-brainer option now that we're a few months removed from all of this, and it's looking really good for the Indianapolis Colts. They have Jonathan Taylor, who is giving a lot of quarterbacks a run for their money for the MVP award this season with just how good he's been.
Yes.
Besides this past week. And then you look at Daniel Jones, because they're able to rely on that run game so much. The Colts are now going all in. You saw at the trade deadline a big price to pay getting Sauce Gardner on their team to try to make a run for the Super Bowl here. Whereas you look at the Vikings and they're just kind of in this no man's land of, are you good? Are you not? You're looking at I think a top 15 pick right now, sitting at 12. So there's a lot of hindsight is the word of the day as we move against the Seahawks.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think truly if JJ does not show significant improvement, first of all, he's got to get on the field with the concussion situation.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't show significant improvement in these last 5 or 6 games, however many he plays, I think they're going to have to bring in a viable, quality veteran guy, which Darnold or Jones would have been, someone in that similar type of mode to compete with him next year, because they just can't count on him until he shows that kind of improvement. And I've been on the record saying, have to have patience with a young quarterback. He's 22 years old. And I've talked on this show, other shows, about guys like Peyton Manning, 28 interceptions his first year, went 3-13. Troy Aikman, 0-11 his first year. John Elway struggled. Matthew Stafford struggled. And Caleb Williams last year was nothing special at all. Now his second year, he's still not playing great, but he's at least playing better. And the Bears have the best turnover ratio in the league, which is helping him, which is what helped Darnold last year here.
Yep.
So a lot of factors, but one thing we know, if Sam Darnold leads the Seahawks to a win over the Vikings and gets his 9th win on Sunday, the noise is only going to intensify, shall we say. But it's going to be, I think, an interesting game, whether McCarthy makes it back, whether Max Brosmer gets his first start, and a lot of drama going on surrounding quarterbacks, Vikings current and past. And
talk about noise. I mean, Sam Darnold, he goes off those for over 300 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, whatever. But let's say even in a loss, Max Brosmer goes out there, Jeff, and he looks more than competent, more than capable. We know his work ethic coming from that PJ Fleck offense, row the boat. He is a football guy. If he shows that he can understand this offense and he looks pretty capable, and it is giving the Vikings potentially a chance to keep it close and come in at, I think, 10.5 point underdogs, and maybe they lose by a field goal, or they lose by 6 or something like that. That's going to even add to the noise and conversations of how quickly do you put JJ back in. I think the smart choice, and maybe you would agree, is you're going to put your 10th overall pick back in the lineup right away, no matter what. But if Max Brosmer comes in, it does create even more noise to go back on your point.
Well, and especially if they happen to win the game in Seattle with Brosmer at the helm, and then all of a sudden they're 5-7 and they're heading into a somewhat more favorable part of their schedule. Washington here next week. Will Jaden Daniels be back? Probably, because that's been the Vikings' bad luck this year. But and then after that they go to Dallas. Well, Dallas could be out of it by then. They have the Chiefs this week. If they fall to 5-6-1, then the Cowboys may be heading out of contention. The Vikings play them on a Sunday night, and then they go to New York to play the Giants. Again, they'll probably face Jackson Dart because instead of Jameis Winston, but who actually gave Detroit a run for their money last week. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, if the Vikings got on a roll, then it would be hard to take Brosmer out of the lineup. It's just a crazy, crazy year, crazy situation. And we'll just have to wait and see how it all unfolds. But meanwhile, it's Thanksgiving week. A lot of great games on Thanksgiving we'll talk about later in the show. There's snow on the ground here in the Twin Cities, and it's cold. But for the Vikings, they're heading to Seattle to play Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. Last year, the Vikings went out to Seattle with Sam Darnold as their quarterback and had a really exciting win in Seattle. That was in week 16. And at that point, the Vikings were 13-2 after that game.
Oh,
Wow.
how the times change.
Yeah, how things have changed and how they can change quickly. Darnold had 3 touchdowns in that game, no turnovers. He was sacked 3 times. Justin Jefferson, 10 catches for 144 and 2 touchdowns in that game, including this 39-yard game winner.
Off play action, stepping up, launching downfield, and it is caught! Twisting, turning, touchdown, Jefferson, Minnesota's back in front.
It's unfortunate we haven't heard that more often this season.
Exactly. Justin's only reached the end zone twice, and last week only 4 catches, 48 yards on 6 targets. Jalen Naylor and Jordan Addison, no catches on 1 target each. That is not how you want to use your talented skill position supporting cast. And that's been the big problem in recent weeks as they've been on this 3-game losing streak, along with other problems, turnovers. We know the Vikings minus eight over this 3-game stretch, now minus 12 for the year. For a team that was plus 12 last year, one of the best in the league, had 33 takeaways last year, only 9 this year, 4th fewest. And furthermore, 21 giveaways, which JJ has a big part in that, along with Miles Price, the kick returner, unfortunately for him and for the special teams. But the Vikings have the most giveaways in the NFL. Interestingly, Seattle has also struggled with turnovers. Despite winning 8 games, the Seahawks are -7, 4th worst, and they have 20 giveaways. Darnold has 10, but as we said, 4 of them were against the Rams 2 weeks ago. So take that one away, and the Seahawks would look a lot better. The Seahawks did rebound from that loss to the Rams and went to Tennessee last week, beat the Titans 30-24. Tougher game than maybe some people expected in that game. But Darnold and his outstanding receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba, JSN as they call him, he is leading the NFL, 1,313 receiving yards. He's on pace to set a season record for a receiver in NFL history. He also broke the Seattle franchise record for receiving yards in a season in only 11 games.
Yeah.
So this guy is going to be a handful for the Vikings secondary to cover. And they've had some issues off and on, the Eagles and from time to time with some other teams. So it's going to be a big game for them. The pass rush is going to be important. Will they get Jonathan Gennard back? He is practicing limited with that shoulder. They desperately need him back in the lineup, even though Dallas Turner has played reasonably well, but he has trouble sometimes setting the edge in the running game. Seattle, a decent running team, Kenneth Walker, and they want to run the ball to help Darnold, protect Darnold. So that's going to be a big part of this game, stopping the run and the Vikings' ability to run the ball, which they gave up on last week in Green Bay. But going back to some of our audio highlights, going back to last week, Darnold and Smith and Jigba combined for this touchdown pass.
2nd and 4 play action. Darnold to the end zone. Smith and Jigba with his 2nd touchdown of the day. 13 yards, and Seattle storms down the field to grab 6 out of the locker room.
And Jeff, what type of confidence do you have that Brian Flores is going to be able to lock down a Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's on pace to break 2,000 receiving yards this year? Like you said, he's already broken DK Metcalf's previous Seahawks record for receiving yards in a season. Like, it seems like this guy is just unstoppable. You know exactly where they're going to get the ball to, and teams just are struggling to limit him so far this season.
Yeah, definitely true. And that's where the pass rush has to come in, because I don't see the Vikings secondary being able to control him. He did have 8 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown in last year's game with Geno Smith as the quarterback. And Geno threw for 314 in that game and 3 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 interceptions, including the game sealer by Theo Jackson. The Vikings need more of that. They have very few interceptions this year after leading the league with 24 last year. So a lot of factors are going to go into this game. And one of the big factors for the Vikings in recent weeks in this 3-game losing streak, which has been so really disappointing after they get that upset win in Detroit, And the formula they used there, they ran the ball over 160 yards in that game. And just in the last couple of weeks, just have not run the ball and not been willing to run the ball as much as they need to. Second half in Green Bay, 3 rushes for 7 yards after 86 yards in the first half. Kevin O'Connell gave up on the run way too soon with his young quarterback under siege, getting sacked 5 times in the second half. They can't handle Micah Parsons on the pass rush. They were moving him in the run game. So hard to understand what the thinking was with the play calling last week and that whole unraveling in the second half. But special teams, as we've said, Miles Price, big fumble against Baltimore, very costly. Kickoff coverage against Chicago leads to the 56-yard kickoff return and the winning field goal. And then Miles Price misplaying the punt in Green Bay, should have got away from the ball, ricochets backwards and hits them. And Packers recover at the 5-yard line, going for taking an 11-point lead. And then the Vikings are all discombobulated at that point, give up on the run, and JJ's getting sacked, throwing interceptions. So one thing that happened last week to Seattle, they gave up a 90-yard punt return by Shamir Dyke of Tennessee. So maybe Miles Price can make amends somewhat for some of his miscues. Now he had a great kick return in Detroit. We know he's got the ability, but he's got to avoid these devastating mistakes that he's making. And here was that punt return by Dyke.
First punt of the day from Michael Dixon. DK. Backpedaling. Great punt by Dixon all the way to the 12. DK trying to get to the outside. He does. He's got a wall of blockers. DK to midfield and beyond. All the way down the sidelines. DK will take it to the house. Touchdown, Tennessee. A special teams play from 90 yards for 6.
And we know how shifty Shamir DK can be, but do you think we see Miles Price maybe be able to replicate something like that against the Seahawks on Sunday?
Yeah, that's got to be the hope for the Vikings. And I'm sorry I mispronounced his name, DK. But yeah, that's where you have to win games when you're struggling in certain phases, such as throwing the ball offensively or whatever the case may be. You've got to be able to make a big play, and that could be a formula for the Vikings to pull that upset. Leonard Williams is a guy for Seattle that the offensive line is going to have to deal with. They're also dealing with injuries this week on the line. Christian Darrisaw and Donovan Jackson left the Green Bay game later in that game with injuries. So O'Connell said that they were not going to practice on Wednesday. We'll see if they make it back later in the week. They need those guys in the lineup too. Mm-hmm. And also the rest of the line playing better than they did against the Packers, where Micah Parsons just tormented them, as he's tormented a lot of teams. But here was Leonard Williams on a big sack of Cam Ward last week.
Chenna Nwosu back on the field for Seattle defensively. Pressure comes, Ward's in trouble. Williams has him in the sack. 6th sack of the year for the vet Leonard Williams.
Let's talk about our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers, who say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And GMC trucks weren't built overnight. Like every American achievement, they are a result of dedication, a dedication to mastering the art of design and the science of engineering, to building upon prior knowledge year after year, decade after decade. GMC, over 100 years dedicated to the art of engineering and the ambition to always move this country forward. We are professional grade. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR on 2026 GMC Sierra 1500 Crew Cab models with a 5.3-liter engine with an average finance savings of $4,692. See your local GMC dealer today, only on 5.3-liter V8 engine for purchase allowance. Length of contract limited, must finance with GM Financial. Some customers will not qualify. Savings based on bank rate of 5.64%. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 12/1/25. Kevin O'Connell got to be pulling his hair out with his young quarterback and what's happened this year.
Yeah.
And thinking about what could have been in hindsight. And he talked this week about Brosmer, Darnold, and the Seahawks.
We all have a lot of confidence in Max. Ideally, you'd love to, have a bunch of runway for him to continue on his journey. But I know Max will prepare like crazy, like he does every week. He's been a snap away here since Carson went on IR, and I know he feels very much prepared if called upon, and he's going to go about the week as he's been doing, which is important for a guy that is one snap away as a young player. How many reps can we steal? Pre-practice, post-practice, he does all the little things to try to get himself ready. If he were to be called upon, and that may be indeed this week. We don't know yet, but we've got to prepare our team for sure.
With the Seahawks, I know it's early in the week from a prep standpoint, but what's high level, what has stood out to you with the way Sam's played?
Yeah, to me, Sam has continued on with a lot of the things he did last year for us. They're very explosive. He does a great job, getting the playmakers involved. I think Smith and Jigba is one of the best receivers in football, and they've got some good tight ends and some other between Cooper, and they make a trade for another, skill player at the deadline, and you just feel, some momentum of that offense, and they're able to move it as well as anybody in the league. With Sam running the show, they've had really what's gotten them at times has just been turnovers, but that's any team in football. But as explosive as they've been and the amount of points they put up, they're absolutely going to be a challenge. And then you look at their defense. I think Mike's doing a phenomenal job with that defense. All the acquisitions that they've made, young veterans, they're flying around, and it is going to be a challenge for us. We have to play good football. We have to play, physical. We have to do a lot of the little things just a little bit more consistent.
Seahawks come into this game ranked 7th on offense, 7th on defense. Vikings are 28th on offense, 11th on defense. Some of the keys, the Vikings did outrush Seattle last year in that game, 81 to 59 yards. And they need to get a big game from Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, run the ball and stop the run, stop Kenneth Walker, who the Seahawks lean on. He's got 677 yards this year. And they want him to be able to run the ball to set up their play action game for Darnold. And then, of course, pressuring Darnold is going to be a big key in this game. Van Ginkel last year, Andrew Van Ginkel had a big game against Seattle, and he's a guy that can be a game changer. We've seen that in the past. He's only got 2 sacks this year, but missed several games. Or he's got 3 sacks on the season, but he had 2 sacks in that game last year against Seattle's offensive line, 2 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits. Blake Cashman had 12 tackles in that game. It was a highlight game during the season for the Vikings to go into Seattle, where they had suffered a lot of losses in past years to Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll and that whole crew, and got that win last year. Let's hear from Brian Flores, the Vikings defensive coordinator. Interesting conversation with him about his relationship with Darnold and how he's going to try to stop him.
Oh, here's, the cafeteria, locker room, training room, talking defense, talking offense. We had a great rapport, friendship, so I'm happy for him. But we will blitz him this week, that's for sure. We will, yeah.
Can your familiarity with him show up on game day at all, or does that present any advantages?
I think every year's different. I think, there's some things that, I think we could say may have bothered him a year ago, but maybe they don't this year. I think based on, having seen it several times, getting more reps at it, getting more familiarity with, a front or a coverage. So a year later, it's hard to know. But you try it out and see if, that still bothers him or that still bothers him. And, if it doesn't bother him anymore, you move on to something else. And if it does, you keep running it. And so, but it's not just Sam. He's got a lot of other people, to lean on, the run game. Schematically, it's a little bit different. So, but it'll be fun. It'll be great to see him and compete against him. And again, they got a great team. So it'll be a great environment, and looking forward to it.
So we're gonna come back and hear from Sam Darnold, talking about his connection with Smith and Jigba. We're gonna go around the NFL with some big Thanksgiving Day games and some other big Sunday games. Also, AJ and I are going to pick the Viking game. But first, here is our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
GMC trucks weren't built overnight. Like every American achievement, they are a result of dedication and the ambition to always move this country forward. We are professional grade. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR on 2026 GMC Sierra 1500 Elevation Crew Cab models with a Turbo Max engine. That's an average finance savings of $49.49. Current eligible GMC owners combine it with $1,350 engine credit plus $1,750 bonus cash and $3,500 GMC loyalty cash to get over $11,500 in total value. That's 20% below MSRP. See your local GMC dealer today. Based on MSRP of $55,370. Must be a current owner of a 2011 model year or newer Buick or GMC vehicle, or a current lessee of a 2020 model year or newer Buick or GMC vehicle through GM Financial for at least 30 days prior to new vehicle sale. Length of contract limited. Some customers will not qualify. Savings based on a bank rate of 5.22%. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 12/1/25.
Sam Darnold, great story last year for the Vikings. Great story this year for the Seahawks. And what a lucky guy he is. He throws to Justin Jefferson last year.
Yeah.
This year it's Jackson Smith and Jigba. Here's Darnold talking about their connection.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, man. Just the way that he's been able to play this year, every single game, right? It's tough, to be that consistent. But I think it starts with his attitude and his prep that he puts in throughout the week. So no surprise whatsoever, but yeah, he's a really good player. And again, I think, the guys that we have, to complement a guy like Jax, starting with the running backs, the tight ends, and the other receivers, there's other guys on the field that the defense has to pay attention to. And I think that can only help him out.
He's able to kind of shield defenders on deep balls, but there's his body control.
Yeah, his body control is, second to none. He can really go up, no matter if the ball is, if the ball's overthrown. I feel like he, has the talent and the speed to speed up and catch it. Or if it's underthrown, he has the ability to, like you mentioned, kind of, put the defender in a tough position and kind of box him out and get the ball and not only, catch the ball, but also try to, score with it as well.
Big challenge for the Viking secondary. Byron Murphy, Isaiah Rodgers, the safeties in coverage. Seahawks have a really good tight end, Barner, who will challenge the Vikings linebackers and safeties. It's going to be a big test.
Yeah.
And certainly offensively, the Vikings going against a very good defense led by Leonard Williams and some other good players. So big challenge on Sunday. Before we get to Sunday, a couple of really exciting Thanksgiving games around the NFL. And AJ, I've got some great Thanksgiving memories of my own. My favorite, of course, was 1998 when I was GM of the Vikings and Randy Moss went off in Dallas on Thanksgiving Day, 3 touchdown catches, 156 yards, I think he had that day, 3 catches, all bombs for touchdowns. And he loved sticking it to the Cowboys, just as I'm sure Sam Darnold would love to stick it to the Vikings, who didn't try to re-sign him with the franchise tag or whatever, even though he ended up getting $100 million from Seattle. But that was one of my great memories. We had a walk-off win in Dallas when Darren Nelson had a 24-yard run in 87. And 88, we shut out the Lions in Detroit. So I've got some really good Thanksgiving memories. There's some great games this week on Thanksgiving, starting with the Packers heading to Detroit. Packers 7-3-1. Detroit's 7-4. Packers beat them pretty soundly on opening day, 27-13 at Lambeau. Lions looking for revenge. But I like the Packers in this game. I think they'll stick Micah Parsons blitzing up the middle like the Vikings did against Detroit. And Jahmyr Gibbs had a hard time handling it. Put pressure on Jared Goff. He made some mistakes. I like Green Bay in this game. Kansas City goes to Dallas. Chiefs hanging on at 6-5. Will be
it seems
trying
like
to,
they're kind of getting their footing right now.
I think they are. Their defense especially playing well. And, Mahomes is always going to be good. And I don't know that any AFC teams are going to want to see the Chiefs in the playoffs as a wild card team, because it looks like Denver's going to win that division. But the Chiefs are obviously always a dangerous team. that's going to be a big game for Dallas to try to hang in the race after they had a big upset win over Philly last week. And then in the evening game, Cincinnati at Baltimore. Baltimore 5 straight wins. The Vikings helped their cause during that stretch in a game that I thought the Vikings could have and should have won. And then on Black Friday, the Bears head to Philadelphia. Both teams leading their divisions. Bears 8-3, clinging to the lead. But I like the Eagles to handle Chicago on Black Friday, even though the Eagles are having their own struggles offensively.
It just feels like the inevitable wake up call for Bears fans. Like 8-3 is tremendous, and they're having a really good season. But I think kind of your point about that matchup tomorrow, Packers Lions, that seems like whoever wins that is now catapulted to probably win the NFC North. And I do think that you're going to have a coming to earth moment for the Bears when they take on the Eagles, because that's tough to go out to Philly and try to win on the road on a nationally televised game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Sunday games, Houston at Indy, a big game in the AFC South. Houston still controls their destiny after beating Buffalo and Indianapolis, trying to hang on there. And they will meet again in Week 18. Buffalo at Pittsburgh, another big game. And we'll be back on Monday to break down Vikings and Seahawks and see what Sam Darnold does against his former team. See if J.J. McCarthy even makes it into the lineup this week. A lot of drama heading into that game. We'll see how it turns out. We'll talk about it on Monday. And this has been Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday, occasionally Wednesday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via link from the Score North website. This is Jeff Diamond with AJ Fredrickson, wishing everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Have a safe, happy holiday weekend.